Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending our event today, Mobility Solutions for Government. I'm Dran Dixon, the Deputy Program Manager for GSA Wireless Mobility Solutions. Today's webinar is the first in a series of educational events featuring our small business industry partners. We're happy to have with us today MetTel and Contact Wireless. I also have with me Kiva Williams and Kelly Adams helping out with a few of the logistics. But first, a few housekeeping items. This webinar session is being recorded and will be posted for future use. All attendees have been muted to improve the experience for everyone. To ask a question at any time, please use the Q&A pod. We have closed captioning available for anyone that may need that use. So let's get started. We're here today to talk about managed mobility and multi-carrier solutions, along with the latest features and functionalities of web-based SMS platforms and how government agencies are using API SMS texting to streamline communications, which will be followed by Internet of Things cross-carrier roaming solutions. To help us meet today's objective, we will be hearing from Max Silber, Vice President of Mobility and Internet of Things at MetTel, and John Word, President of Contact Wireless. Our goal today is to make sure you leave with a clear understanding of what these services are and how they can benefit your agencies. We know your agencies are focused on meeting your missions, and we are focused on helping you do that. Let's take a look at the agenda. Before I turn it over to our speakers, we're going to do our first of two polls. Kelly, please launch the poll. Please describe your role. Possible sponsors are technical subject matter expert, contracting officer or contract specialist, acquisition workforce, mobility program manager, customer experience, communications. Please choose the one closest to your answer. Kelly, can you please show the response? Great. It looks like the contracting officers and contract specialists are the lion's share of our participants today, followed by acquisition workforce. And then technical subject matter expert is a close third. Thank you for that. Now, okay, let's close that. Now I'd like to turn it over to Max Silber. Max?
Thank you, Drand, and appreciate GSA having us join today to walk through the first segment. I'll be reviewing the multi-carrier solution in managed mobility on behalf of MetTel. My name again is Max Silber. I'm Vice President of Mobility and Internet of Things for MetTel. I have been in this space for probably close to 30 years at this point. And I look forward to sharing some of this content with you today. We're going to start off with just giving you a general sense of who MetTel is as a general overview, in case you haven't had the opportunity to work with us yet. And then I'm going to jump into specific solutions and problem statements that most of you are probably having to deal with or source solutions for today. The one thing I do ask is, being in this space for a really long time, keep an open mind of any preconceived notion of what mobility is. Mobility is not what we traditionally, and I like to use visual aids, think of as something like a smart device or maybe a tablet. Mobility is really a secure, rapidly deployable technology. So just think of it from that perspective, and some of the examples that are a little bit unorthodox will probably make more sense. First and foremost, MetTel's a US-based company. We've been around since 1996. That's the year telecom deregulation took place. And we have had great success over the years and have built the company up quite a bit, servicing specifically around 5,000 organizations, both corporations that are US-based as well as federal agencies. We currently have over $2 billion in government awarded contracts. And from a mobility perspective, we manage around 1.6 million mobile connections out in the field today. Important to also note, everything we do in-house. That's everything from pulling inventory off the shelf for any kind of form factor mobile device. We have our own 100,000 plus square foot smart warehouse where we do all our own staging and kitting. We also do all our own customer care, all done in the US in one of our multiple locations, New York, New Jersey, Utah, and Rhode Island. And we do it on a 24/7, 365 basis. And important to note, anyone working in those centers is a fully badged Mettel employee. If we want to move to the next one. Also, I do like to point out when I talk about mobile and mobile solutions, it really all falls under what we call Mettel's Managed Network Services umbrella. And that's something we're really proud of, and we've been recognized for it. In fact, we're now a 4th year in a row Magic Quadrant leader by Gartner for a variety of different services, but many of those services use one form of mobile connectivity or another. So that's part of that delivery stack of solutions that we provide out to our base of users, or 5,000 or so organizations today. I want to talk a little bit about the problem statement. So if you want to just jump to the next slide. One thing we see, and I'm happy to hear that we have a lot of contracting officers joining us today, and others in other roles within agencies. But one thing we do recognize, and we have for many, many years now, and like I said, the company's been doing this since 1996. The mobile group was stood up when I joined the company around 14 years ago. So we've been at this for a while, and we noticed one common denominator that everyone has to deal with is the complexity of deploying any kind of solution. There's a lot of weight on vendor management. You have to source from multiple vendors, multiple ways of configuring devices. So having to go to specialty staging and kitting warehouses before devices can then be shipped out to end users for security purposes, sometimes because there's specific requirements for field use or for specific accessories. There's also the concept of all the ongoing maintenance and repair. Whose responsibility is it? What happens when something doesn't work in a certain region, whether that be a mobile network or a device that was procured from a specific vendor versus another. Of course, there's the security layer as well, and the connectivity layer, where again, as a contracting officer, you have to make those decisions. You have to know, who am I sourcing connectivity services from, for example, for a specific project, and what happens when that specific provider doesn't work in a specific footprint? How do I unwind that and then handle the replacement? So all that creates a great deal of complexity. And again, that's just at the base layer. That's before you add all the additional layers of security software and enrollment engines and additional software packages that need to go on, sometimes something as basic as a smart device in that specific example. And what we really do at Mettel is we simplify that complexity by handling the entire process from beginning to end. That's everything from how you choose access. And again, you're kind of seeing under access a variety of different providers that all fall under Mettel's umbrella as one of the largest wholesale partners of all these different carriers in the US today. And that's also where, to my earlier comment, we're seeing for the first time in history all these different types of network access, and technology solution all merging together. So where you would have maybe procured access that's fixed in a traditional sense for a location, you can now have alternate solutions that include both all the carriers in the mobility category in this example, or even under the access category, something like Starlink, which is part of the portfolio of products that Metel provides as part of its services. But the concept is you should really just try to solve for a specific need, not have to go out and source all these different contracts with all these different vendors. With Metel, you have one single vendor for the entire program. So you have that opportunity and that option. And another thing that's really important is we see ourselves as carrier neutral. So we have on the traditional cellular network front, direct wholesale agreements with all the three major carriers in the US. And we feel that's the only true way to get that 99.5% coverage. Not obviously we work with all these providers, not to say that any of them are bad, but having done very large scale deployments for very large organizations over the last 14 years, one thing we learned is there is no single carrier that can handle every single location. You have to have some diversity. So we've built the program where the devices that we provide are always unlocked from a carrier locking perspective. So even after we deploy a device, if you have someone move to an alternate geography or needs for whatever reason to change carriers because maybe they're more remote based now, they're home based, and the home carrier A is better than carrier B, we can actually push that port very quickly over the air on that same device, remove a lot of that complexity, and not have you need to go back, order a line from a new carrier, cancel a line on an old carrier, deal with the equipment exchange. So simplifying that entire process for the agency from beginning to end, and allowing that flexibility throughout the term, throughout the time that you're with Metel, to allow for as much uptime as possible. And if you do procure multiple carriers through Metel, say 50% of your environment is on carrier A and 50% is on carrier B, we also allow in cases where you're using things like data pooling, if it's not an unlimited data plan, we allow cross-carrier pooling. So much better efficiency overall, depending obviously on the application and the plan type that you buy, but we allow that complete pooling capability for voice, text, and data across all major carriers, again, to simplify the process from your perspective. So you're procuring one device and one plan, and it doesn't really matter where you end up from a carrier perspective putting that device on. The way we really deliver the entire program is as a service, and that's something that's been really successful for us. Allows organizations, regardless of the device type, to really take advantage if they didn't want to go out for any kind of CapEx expenditure in case it was not an included device, maybe it was a specialty device. It allows you to program out or break whatever sum of money that is over the span that you want to use that device. We do all the automated staging and kitting, like I mentioned earlier, in our smart warehouse, so that as soon as the device is ready to go, it has in some cases the case pre-installed on it. Maybe a screen protector is already put on it for you. Any software that needs to be attached to it or enrollment engine is pre-configured at the time that we're pulling a device off the shelf and scanning it. So very automated and very seamless process to be able to push devices out and not have a significant amount of manual steps or additional labor required throughout that process. We do offer, as part of some of our managed program, like MDAS, Mobile Device as a Service, we even do advanced break fix device replacement. So if somebody, for example, sends a device or calls in and says, hey, I broke my device, we can advance them a new device and then go ahead and and pull back the old device and make sure it goes through our end of life device wipe. So again, from a security perspective, it's a complete life cycle management program, not just a kind of let's put devices out there and figure it out when we have to do the refresh. So certainly an option available outside of the traditional models of when devices are included with the plan and everything else, which Metel offers today on all the different schedules. And I get asked a lot, well, how does it all work? Well, a lot of it has to do with automation. Whether agencies go into our Metel Federal portal today, they could place order. It's not to use other vendors' names, but it's an Amazon-like experience. You've got a nice catalog. You can click, you can check out. Whether you do that or do an API integration with our system, and I'm using in this example ServiceNow, which is a popular ticketing system, we can pull that order request directly from a ticketing system, immediately get that ticket, pull inventory off the shelf, pre-configure it to your requirements, pre-enroll MDM and whatever enrollment engine you're using, and then handle any other staging and kitting. Important to note, any orders we actually get before 3 p.m. Eastern time is actually ready for shipment same day. And part of our automation process is also we're giving you information back throughout the process. So if you sent us a ticket or you sent us an API request from your ticketing system, we'll actually pre-fill your own ticket with things like the device serial number, once it's ready for shipment, with the FedEx number, for example, if we're using FedEx. So you have the tracking number and everything else all throughout that process. And that's really what makes this unique, is you can have it instantly, you can have it pre-configured, and if it's set up in the right way, you can even have that go directly to your end user if that's something that your agency is doing today. Great. And just to finish off this segment, I wanted to highlight, as I mentioned earlier, we already have $2 billion in government awards, which so obviously we're heavily invested in the federal sector. I mentioned in the beginning that think of mobility not just as smartphones and tablets. And I do want to point out on this slide, both for GSA, which was kind enough to invite us, and on a larger scale to the U.S. Postal Service, the United States Postal Service, which is a logo on this, we're actually even doing POTS replacement services. So decommissioning aging POTS lines, plain old telephony service, copper lines that are going away quicker and quicker these days. And we are replacing them with digital technology that's been certified by FDNY and many other fire marshal groups for alarm codes, both for burglar and fire, as well as traditional POTS services like voice and fax services. And that project is currently in the midst of installation. Around 17,000 post offices, including the one that's delivering the mail to your house right now. And just to give you a sense of timing, that project started 3 months ago, will be done complete in 6 months, beginning to end, for 17,000 locations. So something that can be done very rapidly if that's a need that you have, where POTS lines are getting disconnected, or you're getting those disconnect notices that are going out pretty frequently across the US. We do have a solution where we could rapidly deploy a solution. And I say mobile because that device can actually utilize mobile connectivity. It comes with 2 redundant SIM cards in it that are active and are part of the solution. And you can either run on mobile services or you can run on broadband that you have in place as part of that solution, and use the mobile as a backup so that you always have a unit that's up and running, even if you lose power or lose network or anything else. And of course, we have all the other contract vehicles here, both GSA Schedule 70, as well as EIS and other contracts, should you want to look up our pricing and our services on those schedules. And I think that's it for this segment.
It looks like, Max, we have a question for you. Why are we getting rid of hardline technology and replacing everything with digital tech?
Yeah, great question. Well, it starts with the Federal Communication Commission saying that it's time to do it. But more importantly, the reason was traditional copper, you get that little bit of power, that little bit of electricity fed from what was traditionally referred to as the plant, the carrier plant. Those plants are running on equipment that's, hasn't been manufactured in probably 30 or 40 years. Was probably the last time they manufactured a part for it. So they're essentially breaking down, and they're very costly to operate. So the carriers made a plea to the FCC to move on to digital technology that's more cost efficient, more redundant, and could provide a greater breadth of services. So once they made that decision, the carriers went ahead and started going through the process of shutting down these plants. Instead of trying to maintaining things like traditional copper. It's not just the plant. Think of copper lines that are buried in the ground. After a certain number of decades, the plastic shielding starts to wear down. So you have issues where, like, maybe it rains in your region, and as soon as water hits that copper line that has a little bit of an electric current running through it, it shuts down service, which is why you then all of a sudden pick up a phone and say, hey, I have no dial tone, for example. So they would have to completely rerun all that infrastructure. And since we do have better, more redundant technologies like digital technologies today, this gives us an opportunity to just transition it to something that from a long-term perspective is more cost efficient and cost neutral. And from a long-term perspective, obviously is more future-proof.
Great, thank you. If there are any other questions, you can use the Q&A pod. Thank you. We'll also have time for questions at the end. Okay, we can take one more question. I'm not sure if this is the question. Every carrier is moving to fiber, and yes, it costs less and the footprint is smaller. Okay, so if you please go ahead and continue to put your questions in the Q&A pod. Max will have a second presentation. And thank you so much, Max, and we'll see you again a little later.
Thank you.
And we're back to Drand.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Max. That was very informative. Appreciate the details that you provided. Now let's turn it over to John Word, President of Contact Wireless.
John? Thank you. Thank you, Drand. I appreciate you guys having us here today. I am, like you said, John Word, President of Contact Wireless. We have been operating in the wireless business primarily in the Western United States with our paging service for the last 35 plus years. I've been in the wireless business since the beginning of cellular back in the mid 80s when I got into it, and that's really all I've done my entire life. So I've got with me today, I don't know if she's going to be able to speak, Samantha, who is our product manager, who may chime in here later on the texting side. Contact's really divided into kind of two different services. We do the traditional old pagers, which you probably remember, beepers. They're all digital or alphanumeric now, instead of the digital ones that you might remember where you just get a phone number and you had to find a payphone or a phone to call the number back. Those have really gone away completely, and everything is now these alphanumeric pagers, which you can actually get a full digital message, and it's been that way for 15 years now. We provide those primarily to first responders, the medical industry, and our biggest customer base is the government, with here in New Mexico and across the country with the national labs for security. In the secure areas where you're not able to take cellular phones and any other kind of device that has any kind of memory or camera associated with it, the pagers are still a very valuable tool and a very, important tool for people to communicate, primarily with unsecure information, employee or staff, family being able to get a hold of the staff, that kind of thing while they're in the secure areas and those kind of things. And then just general messages across the group about meetings, things like that that are unsecure. We also offer a secure solution, which is encrypted end to end, that is available on these devices as well. So that's one part of our business. And we do that, like I said, we have our own FCC frequencies, primarily out here in the Western United States, where we operate the system. The other part of that business that we do is we come in and build private networks for hospitals, for government, just mainly campus needs where you have a campus situation where you need a pager in a small area. So we've done those as well, and we can come in and build the system and hand it over to you to manage, or we can build it and then manage it for you, and maintain it and provide the end user devices as well. So we do that in several situations. And then, like I said, we have our own frequencies that are private frequencies to us that we offer to the public. And, those are the frequencies that we do use with a lot of the national labs as well. See if we've Kelly, can you bring up the slides, please? I didn't start those and I should have done that.
Yes, I will bring them up right now.
Okay.
Okay, can you see those?
This is
slides?
just our contact information. Like I said, I'm John Word. We've got Sam on the line as well. So our paging solutions, we are a small business. We handle pretty much everything we have in-house except for tower climbing. I talked about the secure and encrypted messages that are available. The alphanumeric pagers, they're the old, if anybody is old enough to remember the Motorola devices, this is Unication has taken over the old Motorola design and continued to make that pager. And that's kind of been the staple for the industry for the last 15 years or so. They're all digital now. They're all satellite controlled. We have, the advantages of pagers in the secure, primarily in the, for the first responder, medical, secure areas that the government uses these, is that it's a 900 megahertz frequency. It penetrates buildings very well. It penetrates basements very well. It penetrates hospitals very well. So the reliability is now, better than a lot of the cellular networks that have particularly moved to the 5G, where they've had to lower the power and the penetration is not quite as good, and the connectivity has to be almost perfect to make the connection work well. So we've actually seen a pretty significant increase in the demand for these because of the kind of, unfortunately, unreliability of the cellular system these days in some of these complicated areas and inner building and basements and that type of thing. The other thing we can do is, if you already have your own system on your own frequency, we can sell the devices directly to you yourself on your frequency. So we're able to do that as well. The second major segment of business that we do is text messaging. Go back one slide, can you, Kelly? Well, let's see. That's the end slide, I think. Go back. I don't know if I have the ability.
I'm not sure what happened there. Let me just stop and share again. Give me 1 second.
So like I said, the next major part of our business is our text messaging service. We got into that primarily because of our, you know, our work with the alphanumeric pagers and, you know, delivering text messaging solutions. So we offer two different types of solutions for text messaging. We have several web-based products that are literally, you know, web-based services that you use an individual login and password to access. Three of those that are the most popular, we have TextPage Pro, Text Alert, and Bulk Text. And we, you know, kind of simplify the description of these by saying that our TextPage Pro web-based product is a one-to-one service. Our bulk messaging is a one-to-many service, and our Text Alert is a many-to-one service. So the TextPage Pro services that we offer are primarily used for like customer service type situations where we have an agent that needs to communicate with somebody, and as we know these days, everybody likes to communicate with text messaging. Some people, it's almost the only way they'll communicate with you. So we've had very good success with this, with primarily in like I said, in customer service situations where someone needs to communicate with their client base, or with in many situations we use them across with the state governments for their child support services, where they're communicating with the parents. And if you have their cell phone number, you can send them a direct text message. It basically turns your computer into a cell phone. The difference is that we can log and track all the communications that you have with anybody that you text. There's several more features available on our products that you don't have on your cell phone, and you have you have a way for other people to access it and not have to pass an actual device between people to send messages. The other we can also and then the next one is our bulk messaging, the one-to-many service, and that's where you provide the data to us, or you know, online to the web on the website, that you would upload your own Excel spreadsheet that would have the person's name, maybe a message that could be individually identified for any individual phone number, and the phone number of the person you're sending it to, and then it just rolls through and sends out those messages to everybody on the group, and those can be thousands or hundreds of thousands. The last one is our Text Alert service, which we call one or many-to-one. This is a situation like we use these a lot in facility management, where you've seen situations in maybe airport bathrooms where it says text this number if you've got an issue with the bathroom. Someone can text that number, and then we can distribute that message out to all of the personnel that are responsible for maintaining that bathroom, or cleaning that bathroom, or repairs, or things like that. Another situation or another place where we use the many-to-one is the machine generated messages, where you may have error reports or trouble messages that need to be sent out to a group. The individuals that are on this list can themselves log on to the website, or through their cellular phone take themselves on and off the list to receive those messages. So it gives the end user a tremendous amount of control over being on the group or off the group if they're not, you know, if it's not their if they're not working that day, or it's a weekend, or you know, the shift things, they can change those around. We can put times on those as well, and it allows the individual to control that, or if you want to, the management can control that and decide who has access. So that's all password controlled, and you can give access or restrict it. We are FedRAMP eligible, so that's for security issues. That's a big thing, and we are able to do that. I think that's. Let's go to the next slide. This is just a list of some of the customers that we work with. You can see that we've got the national labs on there: Sandia, Los Alamos. We've got multiple federal and state agencies that don't like us, that don't allow us to advertise that they are a customer, but we have many of those. We do some Homeland Security work. We work for almost half of the states in the country, the state governments, like I said, Child Support Services, Virginia State Police, Pennsylvania's another big customer on the child support side. And I think that's pretty much it for my presentation. I happy to take some questions. I left a little more time so I could take some questions at the end here if there was something specific that anybody wanted to hear about either service.
John, I think this question is for you.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you can see the Q&A pod, but if you look under answered, seems like their solutions are message-based versus talk. I'm not sure.
The question was, are there any push to talk options?
Oh, okay.
And
got
then
it.
they followed
Okay.
up with, it seems like their solutions are message based versus talk.
Yeah, we don't have any, I mean, I'm guessing the push to talk solution you're talking about is the old, we had the old services where they had the cell phone, the Nextel service, which was a push to talk service that kind of combined a cell phone and a two-way radio. We don't offer that. Our pagers are just one way, which again is one of the primary reasons why they're used in the secure areas, because they are just one way. They don't have any memory. They don't have any cameras. They're just a one-way receiver. So that's our paging service.
Okay. Here's another one. Is there a specific service carrier, or can the devices be used on all major US and/or international carriers?
I'm not sure which service they're talking about. Our paging service. Our paging service is specific to a frequency. So if it's not a frequency that we own, it would be one that another company owns, that, or one of the two other big carriers in the country that has a frequency. So I guess the answer to that, if it's related to the paging, is no. That it's frequency specific to an area. Our texting can be used nationwide on any device that receives a text message.
Okay, are there any other questions, Kelly?
There's one more question. Does the old style DSS and ISDN also provide upgradability to fiber?
I think that one was for Metel, so we'll save that to the end. I think that came in before John started. So we'll go ahead and stop there for now, but keep your questions coming in, and we will have both Max and John on at the end for additional questions, and Samantha as well. I think we have Samantha on. So with that, we will go ahead and I will find Max's next presentation and turn it back to Drand.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, John. I appreciate the details. And yes, I am old enough to remember pagers when they were brand new to the market, especially. So I like to chuckle at that, but I know that they are very valuable and instrument that's currently being used just as more frequently than they did in the past. So now we're going to turn it over to Max for a discussion on cross-carrier Internet of Things solutions. Max?
Great, thank you again. And before I kick it off, I could quickly answer that question. The short answer is yes, because you are replacing an ISDN if it's part of the copper that's getting decommissioned. You're basically just looking for what you're trying to transmit over the now digital appliance that we install as a replacement. So once we know what we're transmitting, the hardest part, quite frankly, for POTS replacement or any copper replacement is actually alarm codes, which is something we've been incredibly successful with. And that's why we've had great success in deploying our solution, because those are very, very specific to the specific panel. Other services like T.38 fax, any kind of data transmission that you're using ISDN for today, that's typically easier to solve for once we do that conversion. So I hope that answers that question. And to jump into, so the second segment here, this is actually what I get really excited about because I'm a little bit geeky, and this is the fun stuff, is IoT and what we call cross-carrier roaming. So in the first segment, I talked about more the traditional sense of just consolidating what you would procure today from various vendors, the direct mobile network operators, the Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile. There's a few others in the US for traditional types of services like a smartphone, a tablet, or anything else for that matter. Well, the other layer of product that we developed when we entered the organizational space, whether it's enterprise or agency, both on the state and federal level, is we realized there was this really big problem out in industry. And we started to talk to some of the biggest CIOs in the country that had massive deployments of mobile devices. And we said, well, what's the number one challenge you're constantly solving for? They said, well, we have a lot of challenges. We said, okay, let's do a little math here. Pull up all the tickets, all the trouble tickets you get. What do you have more trouble tickets for than anything else? And they said, well, that's actually interesting. Outside of password reset, believe it or not, that's number one across the board. It's when people run into connectivity problems that are not consistent, meaning they might have great service on a single carrier on that device, in location A being their home or location B being the company's office location. But when they're on the road, driving 65 miles an hour or going to a specific site that they don't normally visit, maybe they were running into carrier challenges. So we developed a very unique technology that at this point has been deployed and operational in the field by some of the largest corporations in the US, as well as federal agencies, used in use cases with Homeland Security, where you only have a single SIM card, the little plastic SIM card, or in the electronic format, an eSIM, an embedded SIM. It comes in both form factors, but it allows you to utilize all available carriers under
Did we lose Max?
Did we lose someone?
I think we lost Max. Oh, there he's back. He's moving at least.
what happened.
Yeah.
Maybe someone didn't like my new technology of single SIM, but I'm just kidding. The concept here being that you can the device actually tells us when it's losing signal as you're driving down the highway, for example. And traditionally, when you drive down the highway, what really happens with that cellular connection is you're bouncing from tower to tower as the signal level is dropping. In this case, we're doing the same thing, but we're also allowing for switching of carriers to always give you the best access to the best service. This technology is really specific to data-only devices. So typically utilized in fleet, it's utilized in tablets that are being moved from location to location. But it's been really successful because the end user always has connectivity. So we do this a lot in healthcare, where you have visiting nurse or visiting clinician services. As they go into different homes, they never really lose connectivity services. Or in large fleets and vehicles, and individuals driving in vehicles, where again, as they're moving around the US, they're not losing any service. And the example I show here is really specific to the US market. So we're utilizing Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile. We're also utilizing Cellular One and US Cellular to give you the most comprehensive access to cellular networks, all under a single plan. So from a procurement perspective, you're not buying all these different things. You're buying one plan, one SIM card or eSIM activation, and the technology automatically does the switching for you. The other compelling part is this technology actually works globally as well. We work in 165 countries, and we're utilizing over 650 mobile providers worldwide. So something that's been really successful, and I kind of call it the Swiss Army knife of connectivity, because all you have to do is plug it into a device, turn the power on, and it does everything for you automatically. So been a very successful product for us. And like I said, already being utilized by federal agencies like Homeland Security today in a variety of different projects. The next part is just to kind of talk about other areas that this solves for, outside of just giving you the right access. What we learned is when you set up or need to set up a new requirement for a new application in the field, you also have to set up what's called an APN, or private APN, for security purposes. That's essentially a private link between the carrier and your information and your end users. What this technology allows us to do is hand off a single APN, so do one APN integration into your data center or into your hub, but still deliver all these different carrier networks, and then specific to each application. So in this example, we have, if you wanted to do this with the 3 major carriers, you would have to essentially set up for maybe a fleet application, a field worker application, and an IoT device sensor application. In each of these, you'd have to set up a minimum of 3 APNs with each carriers. That's 9 APNs to manage. Now, in reality, in large environments, we're seeing organizations manage hundreds of APNs. So think of it as hundreds of virtual networks that need to be managed for up or down, or any kind of issues with connectivity and continuity. In this case, you get a single APN and access down to the use case for each carrier service. So you only have to manage one in this specific scenario. So solves a lot of problems from a uptime perspective and a maintenance perspective, but also from a reporting perspective. You're not trying to consolidate all these different various services that are kind of a minimum requirement when deploying these types of networks. And if that isn't exciting enough, and for me it's really exciting, but if that's not exciting enough, I also want to point out that we are a few months away from releasing the next enhanced version of what we call METTEL Single SIM, and this is METTEL Single SIM 2.0. I know it's a very original name, but I'm not that big into marketing, more about application. What makes this unique is now we're not only allowing access to all these different networks under a single connection and single interface back to METTEL, we're now extending the technology out to what we call NEG. So NEG means it could be 5G, it could be LTE, it could be an in-building CBRS access point that you're using, or any 3GPP satellites that you're seeing a lot of announcements around coming from the major carriers. So the ability to essentially deploy a mobile device with a SIM card in it that can then access automatically all these various technologies. And that's both public available as well as private. So it can be configured where you have a device that you're giving to folks within your agency, when they're in your premise and you have a private network, whether private LTE or private 5G, that device will access the private 5G or private LTE. And as soon as they leave the building, that same device can now be utilized with public networks or other types of networks. So it's really bringing together, to my earlier point when we started, the consolidation of both what was traditionally a fixed network, like maybe you're using Wi-Fi for in-building, but you want to move away from that into private LTE or private 5G for security purposes. But now you don't need multiple SIM cards to have that device also utilized when that device is outside of the private network. You can utilize it across the board. And that solves for a lot of technical challenges when devices are trying to search for alternate networks to have that continuity of service. And I'll give you some real world examples in a few of the following slides. It also gives you complete network control. So you can literally have your IT team set up a range of IP addresses, and you can turn service on by something as simple as saying, these 1,000 IP addresses, go ahead and activate services on them. And that's 1,000 tablets out in the field. So it gives you a lot more control and management over the network. So as I mentioned earlier, what's unique here is you don't need multiple SIM cards, one for private network, which is the bottom half of this slide, and one for public access, which is the top part of this slide. And again, public access is all available major carriers. So you're getting best of breed signal wherever you are. And if you're in a private location that only uses a private network, you can utilize it with the same device that's deployed with the same SIM card specific to your organization. So really groundbreaking stuff, something that we developed in conjunction with Dell Technologies and Broadcom and a few other big technology partners, and something that we're very excited to introduce both on the private sector space as well as in the federal space in the coming months. And then I get asked a lot, well, I don't know what to do with private 5G. Is there an application? You know, I haven't installed it in the buildings in my agency. And I always say we use this today because it gives us instant network. So if I have a device that's provisioned for both public access and private, and I had a location where I needed to set up a quick network, we actually have pre-configured Pelican cases that come with what I'd consider to be 5G in a box. You literally turn the box, you open the box up, the Pelican case, you give it a source of power, you flip a little toggle switch, you wait 5 minutes, and you've got a fully functioning private 5G network that's available for up to, I believe, 6,000 square feet within an enclosure and close to 10,000 square feet in an open area. And if you don't have backhaul because it's a new location or it's a temporary emergency location, because Metel is an authorized Starlink reseller, we actually have already developed a Pelican case Starlink that literally plugs via an Ethernet cable into this 5G device or into this 5G Pelican case and gives you a complete broadband and private 5G network on the go. And in a matter of, under probably 10 minutes, you can have a fully functional network that could be utilized by all the devices issued by your agency, because those devices already have those specific SIM cards that we provide on Single SIM 2.0. So very unique experience. We've already started getting a significant amount of requests around this, but like I said, we expect to be fully operational with the second generation that allows for both private and public under the same stack to be available in the next 60 days. But the traditional one that's already working on all publicly available cellular networks, that's something that's been in production and out in the field and being utilized by hundreds of thousands of devices for around 4 years now. So very well-proven technology that solved a lot of problems for many organizations. And just as a quick use case, Important to note, regardless of whether you're using it for healthcare or energy, construction, utility, just general agency requirements, you're getting improved cybersecurity because you're always sitting behind your firewall. The way the technology works is it really extends your network, your secure network, all the way down to the edge device. And the edge device is operating under those same requirements behind your firewall. So it's built to be a hyper secure solution that really takes advantage of all the security stack you already have in place. It does improve in-building coverage because once you have it set up for the devices, all you have to do is deploy edge points in a physical building, or like I showed in a temporary sense with our Pelican case, and you're up and running from that perspective. You don't need to use any alternate public networks that are potentially not secure. You have a single SIM or single activation SKU, so you're not trying to manage multiple SKUs to get solutions out in the field. And really important, single IP address. We get this request all the time. Don't think of just the device. Think of something like a wireless printer. Wireless printers have a hard time moving between mobile connection and Wi-Fi. So by completely eliminating the need for Wi-Fi in this case, because you can even use private network or private 5G and then use public 5G, the device is never trying to change IP addresses, and therefore it's never going offline and trying to come back online. So solves on a variety of levels and gives you much more consistent and better network continuity overall. And then one other use case, which I think is coming up, certainly anything to do with fleet services. So anything within, like I said, a moving vehicle, whether it's the Fleetmatics software you're using at the agency, or it's a tablet that's mounted or with the user in the vehicle, again, gives you that sense of, and I have customers today already in beta on this technology. They do a lot of waste management. So they're moving vehicles in and out of depots. As the vehicle moves into the depot, it used to have to transition to Wi-Fi in order to upload all the work orders and download the new ones. Now it stays on that consistent network. So it's not having multiple devices go offline and then try to go back online as the vehicle then, empties its load and then goes back out for the next route. It's actually having that consistent experience. And as I mentioned earlier, we do this today. We work with a variety of different agencies on a variety of different contracts. I just want to close by saying we are also categorized as a small business. So we can certainly work on any small business set aside within existing projects that you have today. And I'm happy to take any questions if we have any time left.
So Max, there's a question about 5G networks, and is there a capability to expand the footprint?
Yes, you can essentially put 5G, once you blend public with private, you're no longer dependent on the network operator to extend it. You can always extend it to, the middle of Yellowstone Park if you wanted to. By putting up your own private 5G radio. And if you had no backhaul, again, you can just use Starlink in that example as your backhaul back into your network. So there's a variety of solutions of how to extend 5G without just being dependent on the underlying network providers.
Okay, great. Well, we are about out of time, so let me turn it back to Drand.
Hey, thanks, Max. And now that brings us to the end of our event. I would like to again thank our industry partner, Max and John, and you, the audience, for attending this and participating in this event today.